your friend that you're working with in logistics,
Yes.
he's from Ukraine, had a chance
Andrew
to meet him.
Sapko.
So what do you think is going to happen to Ukraine when you're seeing, Biden saying, hey, if you don't attack, Ukraine, I will attend the summit, but if you do, I will not. The Ukraine prime minister saying, stop calling this and you're scaring the hell out of my people. Just leave it alone. We got this. Putin's not going to do anything. We're in communication. Where are you at with that?
Consumer prices went up 7.5% in January. Inflation is out of control. People go to the store every day and they buy stuff. They see higher prices. Put gas in the car, they see it. They look to their leaders and they understandably blame them. Biden's facing this now. His approval ratings are really low. His politics is very bad. And nothing like a good war, okay, to help you in your domestic politics. Now, do I think Biden is going to lead us into war over Ukraine? I do not. We will not go to war with Russia over Ukraine. Do I think that there's a real risk that Russia might invade the eastern part of Ukraine? Yes, they did it in Crimea. It's very possible. But do I think Biden is exaggerating the threat and his administration is exaggerating that? So much so that when he calls Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, and Zelensky tells him, stop scaring our people, it's not as bad as you're saying it is. Do I think that's cynical politics by Biden? I do. If you're asking me to predict an outcome, I don't know that I have one. But I think it's a combination of Putin wants to flex his muscles and he's fearful of NATO expanding further with Ukraine. And I think there are a lot of ethnic issues in that part of Ukraine where historically, if you know anything about that part, Stalin had populated a lot of Russian nationals to that part of the Ukraine during the famine in the late 1930s with his failed collectivization, socialist policies that were starving the Ukrainian people because they weren't producing enough crops. So these are real complicated.
You don't think nothing's going to happen? You think he's just trying to, he's bluffing? You think Putin is just bluffing?
It's hard for me to predict an outcome. I don't know what the outcome's going to be. Do I think it's possible he might do it? He did it in Crimea. He could do it. Do I think if I bet on it, would I say he's going to do it when he's facing the economic sanctions that he'd be facing from the United States and Western Europe? I would think he's not going to do it. And then I think part of what he's doing, too, is he's cozying up to China, his relationship with China, to build a stronger relationship with China because I think Putin and Russia feel they've been isolated in the power game. So I think I'm hoping that it's more posturing and positioning than an actual invasion. But if you're asking me to bet on it, I don't know. I don't know what the outcome's going to be.
Tulsi Gabbard said she warns the military-industrial complex wants a war in Ukraine. This is a political insider story. Former Congressman Tulsi Gabbard echoed former President Eisenhower's famous warning on Saturday, saying the neocons, warmongers, have spent years stoking the new Cold War with Russia and have now brought us to the brink in Ukraine. This serves their own interests and lines the pocket of the military-industrial complex with trillions of dollars. Let's not be sheep. And then she told Tucker later on, what we have, unfortunately, is Democrats, Republicans, mainstream media, the Washington elite, essentially in the pockets of the military-industrial complex. Do you agree with that?
I think there's a lot of truth to what she's saying. Again, it's easy to be anti-Russian in the United States. We were raised to fear the Soviet Union, and for many rightful reasons. My father fled communism after World War II and didn't go back to his native Yugoslavia because he wanted to come to a country that he perceived as being free, and mostly was. But after the fall of the Berlin Wall and after the dissolution of the former Soviet Union, promises were made to the new Russian country and their government, to Yeltsin, by NATO, about NATO expansion. And while Poland, I think rightfully should be in NATO, and some of the other countries, and maybe Ukraine to some point, that remains to be seen. But a lot of these promises have been broken. And when the United States and NATO decided to break up a sovereign country, Yugoslavia, where my father came from, over Kosovo, when they decided that they were going to force a sovereign country to give up a portion of its country because of the ethnic situations there, they created a precedent, and they basically told the Russians, you're of no consequence, because historically the Russians have always been allies of the Serbs and that part of the region. With the complicated politics of the old Ottoman Empire, your people have been screwed by them, the Armenian genocide and all the rest. And so when NATO and the United States decided to break up a sovereign country the way they did, that was a message to Putin and the Russians. You can't trust these people. We can't work with them. And so a lot of what you're seeing is a manifestation of those relationships that go back 25 years. So if you're asking me to predict an outcome, I don't really know. What she is saying, do I believe that? Absolutely. I sat on the House Armed Services Committee, and I voted. I plead guilty to this. I voted for that war in Iraq. And I remember sitting there as a young congressman, listening, watching all these Joint Chiefs of Staff generals under oath testify, classified hearings about the weapons of mass destruction that were there. And I'm asking myself, I remember, could they be lying? Because if they were there, that seems like we should get in there and go get those weapons of mass destruction and get them away from Saddam Hussein. So if it's true, I have to vote for this war. Hillary voted for the war. And I remember looking at Hillary, and I'm thinking to myself, could they be lying? I don't have enough experience here, so I want to look to see what other senior members in the Congress are doing who would know better. Mm-hmm. And what better person than her? She was the former First Lady, and she was very close to her husband when it came to the governing side.
Yeah.
She would know whether or not these generals are lying or not. Well, they lied, right? She voted for the war. I voted for the war. Bernie Sanders didn't. I remember thinking, man, that guy's something else. He was right. We were wrong, but we were lied to. So when Tulsi Gabbard says what she says about the political industrial complex and those neoconservatives who like to get us involved in foreign ventures and Halliburton, those contractors and all the rest, do I believe it? I absolutely do.
Do you think those generals actually lied, or the information that they received from the people higher up, the military industrial complex was feeding them misinformation? Because it's not like these generals got rich off of this, right?
No, your point's well taken. It's a lot more complicated than whether or not they just blatantly lied to you. Somebody was lying along the way. They may have gotten a lot of misinformation, faulty intelligence, maybe just fake intelligence. Not sure. All I know is there were no weapons of mass destruction there, and we voted for that war predicated on that.
So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.